Okay. All right. Okay. Good morning. Please find a seat. Welcome. Okay. Okay. Thank you all for coming. This is great, a wonderful turnout. Thank you so much. My name is John Humphrey. On behalf of the Sunday Forum Committee, I'm here to welcome you to our Sunday Forum event this morning. Not a whole lot of ado or surprise and that we need to talk about who we have talking with us this morning. Just a couple real quick things. If you happen to have a hearing problem, some of us white hairs or no hairs do. We have hearing aid devices back in the back. If you've never used one and think you need it, please consider it. They actually do help. So they actually work. If you're new to the building, don't know the area, there's a restroom a little ways down the hall there if you need that during the course of the morning. And that's all of the, logistical information that we need to deal with. So without any further ado, I would like to introduce JT, who will talk to us about the current status of the interimship, and give us news and updates. Thank you so much. Please welcome JT.
Thanks. It's good to see you all. It's kind of fun to be here. And remember the last time I was here, it was a while ago. Does anyone remember what I said the last time we were in here? Anything? Where were we? I thought I said something about we were in the middle of the beginning or something like that, the end of the beginning, that kind of thing. I know that kind of stuff makes sense to me, but not to everybody, so I'll make sure to do more than that this time. So let's just set the context very briefly. We're in a 2-year process, more or less. It's not an exact date. I came here on March 5th of 2025, so we're just about halfway. And I would say I can just give you the cheat sheet right now. Things are going well as far as interim matters are concerned, as far as I can tell. From where I sit, this church is making progress. I'm really pleased with it. And we are in the middle. And we are just beginning to make that turn. A little bit like Secretariat on the back straight, starting to head into turn 3. I'm looking at the faces. All of you know who that is. And so in this context, what happens during the 2 years is there's just a coming that's an orienting and assessing. And that's happened. I've looked over the system, I've been with you all long enough to sort of get what's happening, hear a lot of stories, super helpful, and then assess, well, what would this church need during its interim time to be a healthier church than when we started the interim period? What would be helpful for the church and also make life easier for the next settled minister? That's been done, and we talked about one of the main frames for that, and I'll get back to that, mission and margin. And so in the middle of an interim, you act on those things, and you solidify those things that you identify as needing attention. And that's what we're doing right now. We're in that middle place. We're acting on them, and we're attempting to get them solid and solidified so they'll stick. And then toward the end of the interim process, which will be later this year and maybe in early 27, that process of searching for the next settled lead minister will be well in process by then, and then we'll be in a time of kind of preparing for that arrival, whatever that means. These other things will keep happening. We'll be solidifying things that we're doing. And so that's the big context. Let me get into some more specifics. And so as you know, one of the tools that's most important for me with organizations is polarity thinking or polarity wisdom. two poles that are both important. They're different values or energies, and they need each other. Even though they might be seemingly in tension or even opposing, they actually need each other. And here, to oversimplify, one of the things I saw was that mission and margin were not together. The mission of the church and the financial wherewithal were not working together. And there were a lot more financial challenges than I anticipated when I arrived. And so we've been working on that one, and we are making progress. I want to talk about that. The progress on the margin, we just approved an annual budget that stays with the 5-year plan of reducing the percentage of draw we take from our reserves. As you know, reserves that sit and earn interest only earn so much interest. And if you're drawing more than that interest, you are essentially chipping away at your long-term reserves for the future. And so the goal before I ever got here was to get to the place where we are every year drawing only what might be kicked out. There might even be a little extra that can be put back into the principal. We are making progress on that 5-year plan. This is year 3 of that 5-year plan. And the goal was to make sure that we did not draw more than 10%. And so what I see is we are on that path. And next year, when we look at FY 2027, we will have a meeting in the early part of 27 where we'll look at an annual budget. The budget that will be proposed will be at that 6% rate. The commitment for that is solid with the Board of Finance and Administration, and we will be working this year, probably starting late spring, early summer, to see how are we going and what scenarios would help us get there. So that commitment is there, and that's really reassuring for me because I'm interested in the long-term sustainability of this place. In that way, as you heard me say earlier, the last time we did this, we were talking about bringing in maybe some big partner, maybe sharing this building with another church or another big nonprofit. What's emerging is not one big partner. What's emerging and active is a number of smaller partners. That's also another polarity, planned and emergent. You can plan things, but then you have to be responsive to what just emerges. What's emerging are several people. We have renegotiated our lease with Vivaboo, the childcare that's here, to get them up to market rate. They've been very cooperative and generous to try to do that. We are in talks with 2 other organizations, nonprofits who we feel are mission aligned, to come join us in this building. And in fact, in a sense, it's going so well. David Langamo and I are trying to remind ourselves and then others that, well, we don't have unlimited space. We can't make promises we can't keep. So we're so encouraged by the things that are coming toward us that we realize we have to slow down and make sure we're clear about we have a place for that party who's interested, and we can sustain that. That's a nice problem to have. We will know more. One of the things I want to name in this gathering is that in 26, one of the things you will see is that spaces will change. We've been talking about it, if you've been around these conversations, but in 26, by the middle of the year, certainly by the fall, you will see that, oh, that used to be, now that's starting to happen, and that's a big move this year. Longer term, we will keep doing that. It is likely that in order for us to reach sustainability, we will need to look very seriously, and I've already made plans for renting out the 2nd floor of the education wing. Portions or a significant part of it. So that's what I call the part where you go up the stairs off of Jones Common, the education wing. It's on the south end. The south end. And so I just want to give you forewarning about that in terms of sustainability. You can always just cut things. But my concern for many churches, and this would be another one, is you can also cut things from the standpoint where you lose kind of who you've been. And that can be an extremely difficult process. You can lose a tremendous amount of momentum. We could balance a budget tomorrow. Just get out the big red pen and start crossing things off. But with that will go staff and programs and momentum. So what we are trying to do is balance mission and margin have them work together so that we keep a vital mission alive and keep as many programs and staff as we can and make that efficient and vital. We're always looking for opportunities for that. But that's a reason why this strategy is being engaged. I want to tell you that. You could just, kind of close the walls off and say, well, this is just for Plymouth. You could do that. But you would have a very quiet building, and eventually you'd have a lot less programming and vitality of mission, in my judgment. And so we are trying to do it the other way, to bring more people in and celebrate that. And with that revenue, strength for the budget for the short term and eventually for the long term. I want to remind you that we've been gifted, literally. Money has fallen out of the sky. Anybody have that happen at home? I don't know what's going on, if there was a rabbit's foot in my pocket. We said just the right prayers, but you know about the Larson gift of over $2 million. Most of that is already in the bank, and we're waiting for the last part of it. Once they settle up the last accounts, we'll get one more six-figure check. We also got notification of another six-figure gift out of the sky. All we know is that this person signed a fellowship pad once before COVID. Don't know if that's the only time they were here at worship, but once again, we're just waiting for them to shake out the last of the bills, pay off the debts, and another six-figure check that I can't particularly know because we got to pay off the debts will come to us, and we had no knowledge of that. So I'm appreciating these gifts, and the momentum is building. I want you to know that. I also want to share in terms of the margin side that I would say we've been gifted. We'll see how good she is, but we're pleased that we've found a consultant who specializes in churches and redevelopment of their property. And so we had a very important question. I see Dana sitting back there. Thank you for your question at the last congregational meeting about, because we're getting to deferred maintenance in this building. We're going to spend almost $1 million this year repairing things, getting things back. We've got boilers that are ready to go, and they tell me that it gets cold in Minnesota in the winters, so you might want one of those. But it's a really relevant and important question. And this year we're going to attempt to answer that in a significant amount, if not 100%. And so we found the funds, and we're working with the final contract language to hire a consultant to guide a group through a multi-month process of assessing the property and looking at what are the other longer-term strategies for redevelopment. Many churches, you may have heard stories, have done different things around the country. This is going on a lot. Housing, retail, all sorts of options, but they're highly specific to context. They are hyper-local, you might say. It doesn't matter even what another church did across town. It matters what happens at 19th and Nicollet. What's possible here? What's the story with this lot? How does that behave in this neighborhood? How does that behave in the real estate market? All of those kinds of things would be considered, and she would help us through that. So I'm really pleased to announce that seems to be on its way, and we hope to sign that contract soon, get a ad hoc committee together, and have them sit with her for about 6 months, and in the end come out with several possible scenarios, like 20-year scenarios. Here's how Plymouth could stay viable. Because simply selling and moving is not as simple as that sounds. It is a massive project. There are losses involved, not just of historic sense, energetic sense. So it has to be a pretty significant thing. I know churches who've done it, but it was specific to their context and it fit for them. That's what they discerned. That is an option. I'm not recommending it here, but Dana's question is still relevant. Then how would that happen? So I'm happy to say we're working on that, and it's coming down the pipeline. Just a few more comments, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. I also see progress on the vitality of mission. I see it in our worship. Not everything is numbers, but our worship attendance numbers have been really strong for months now. And you can probably feel it in the room. It's lovely, and that's one sign of a revitalized congregation. It's happened before in interims I've done where there's that sense, and unless we get this cooking in worship, it's not going to be easy to do anything else, because that is the energy of mission. It is nurtured by our worship together, by our connection to the life energy of being together and being with that divine presence and wanting then to express it in our lives together. I also see it in program attendance. I see it in the Leadership Council, who is in dialogue with the Campus Task Force vision. Things do take time, but it is an ongoing conversation in that Leadership Council, which represents the leadership of all of our program and administration areas. I also want to say that when I came, the first Board of Finance and Administration meeting literally involved a shouting match. And that was a clue to me, not just on the paper, that maybe numbers weren't right, but there was not a working container that would help it. Like the board that we need to be expressing that ministry of finances and administration was in conflict. And I'm glad to tell you, when I go to BOFA meetings now, that is not present. Neither have they become a rubber stamping organization, I assure you that. People are leaning forward, engaged, talking over the issues, and coming to some agreement and moving forward. So I want to say that from a financial standpoint, but I also want to say it from a standpoint of mission. It is a ministry, but I'm excited to say that they are engaged with the Racial Justice Initiative. So the Racial Justice Initiative is trying to help all of us go from where we've been in a world of white supremacy to a world where there is equal justice, equal equity. That's a long journey because it's been so ingrained. And so one of the questions becomes, as anyone in 12-step program would know, making amends. Now that we're here, what can we do? Because we know that happened then. What can we do now to help that? So that it helps this right now, this current moment. But we know that things happened, unjust things, things that still have a pain and a reverberation. And so in terms of mission and margin, this is one of my favorite stories so far that's emerging at Plymouth. We have the group in charge of margin, if you will, BOFA, engaged with our mission. And racial justice folks have said, we need to think seriously, Plymouth, about what are we going to do about these deficits that still linger from our resources. And so BOFA says, yes, you're right, and we've also got to figure out what is our capability to do that? What would that look like? Let's be in a thoughtful process. Let's do that, but let's get together and work that out. That is mission and margin literally coming together. I'm excited that that will start this year as well. How do we move ourselves along that path of justice and do it in a way that honors both of those poles? And the last thing I'd like to say around my excitement about mission, speaking of money from the sky, anybody know who Eli Lilly is? Wow, okay. Not personally, I understand. I haven't had any lunches or a thing. The Lilly Foundation is sweet on churches, that they always have been. It's their main function, mostly. And they do lots of grants, and we have just walked right into a grant. It's administered through St. Catherine's, and is for churches to build their contemplative practice, their contemplative prayer practice. It's already happening. It's been going for 5 years, and we've been invited to kind of merge in. The Board of Spiritual Formation is active. They will be our leaders in this, and they will make a decision about joining. I think people are very positive about it. And then literally we would be gifted with, if you want to call it expertise or trained people and resources, to be with us for a multi-year process of trying to build the congregation's contemplative strength. And of course, I'm a big fan, as I keep dropping, I'm a big fan of remembering that we can't do good justice work without good prayer. And if you're just praying and not doing justice, what are you doing? This is an opportunity to build that cycle, to build that cycle that helps us heal in our own lives, the within part, but also to heal among us and to gain strength to do ministry beyond us. So I'm happy that that money is sort of falling from the sky, if you will. More on that later this year. Those are the highlights, and I think now's the time for Q&A. We've got microphones, and I suppose if you just need one to be brought to you, probably especially with this seating, we'll just bring it to you.
Okay. If you have a question, I know it's easy and quick to blurt it out, but please don't. We'd like your question to be heard by the people who are attending via technology, not here in the room with us. So please raise your hand with questions. Myra and I will get the mics to you, and please go that way. Thank you.
Not yet.
So maybe the consultant you were talking about will cover this, but I'm just wondering if you're planning in the next few years or forever is to hire a staff person. I've heard other churches call it development, but their only job is to bring in money, besides from us. For example, I know Annunciation Church does a fundraiser every year, Dancing with the Stars, and they have a pro come in,
Sure.
and then they grab you and grab
Sure,
Nina,
sure.
and
Right.
you perform, and
Right.
then we pay. And just be, we're not going to do that here, don't worry.
Yeah.
But just be thinking outside the box and how we can bring in money and basically sell the church, which isn't fun and it's kind of crass. But is there any plan to hire somebody, either part-time or consultant or any thoughts like that?
There's no current plan to hire a director of development, and any plan about hiring will have to go through quite a bit of scrutiny because we are being very tight around staffing as a way to maintain our fiscal discipline. It's not that we're not open to creative solutions like that, but it'd have to be talked through about where would that money come from, how does that all work out in the end. But I know David Langamo comes from a world around donors and donor relations and so forth, so he's not unfamiliar with what are we doing to enhance our relationships with our giving ministry. And so I can also say that the interim ministry team sent out something to you all via email and talked about the surveys they did, and some suggestions came through that, and they will be sending those suggestions out to all the appropriate boards. And so that one would be another that could be sent out to the appropriate board. Next question.
Thank you. As John Humphrey mentioned, there's a lot of white hairs and no hairs. Is that what he said in the congregation? And I'm sure part of our long-term sustainability at Plymouth depends on our demographics and
Sure.
The influx of younger families. And I wonder if you could speak to any trends that you might be seeing along those lines at Plymouth.
Well, one thing that's happening with this generation, as you know, it's the greatest transfer of wealth in the history of the planet. And we just got some of that falling from the sky. So there have been conversations, certainly, and there are quietly plans in motion to try to revive our planned giving ministry here. One of the ways that churches do ensure their future is by taking the wealth of the present and investing it long term so that future generations can continue. It's happening right now in this church. Without the generosity of those ancestors of faith, Plymouth would look very differently than it does right now. And so to keep that going and enhance it will be part of that. The other does have to do with something that can be very difficult, and that's growing churches in these days. So I actually don't recommend that people think about growth as much as they think about just being vital and attracting people, if only just to stay at the same size. As people naturally come to the end of our lives, more members are coming in. And so for me, and I'll just use the word loosely, the solution is vitality. Because people in this country have not lost their sense of the importance of the divine, of a spiritual life. What they have lost is any trust in institutions. And so they don't just walk in here because, oh, I got to go to church. I need to check that box off, and I'll see which. They certainly don't do it by denomination, which they used to do. I'm a Presbyterian. Where's my local franchise? But now they don't even do it at all in large numbers. And so there has to be a way in which there's vitality, and that vitality, I would suggest at this point for churches, has to do with, I'll preach later about this, probably around Pentecost, has to be with experience. People have to have an experience of God, of Spirit. And that doesn't necessarily mean we're progressive Pentecostals, although I love that phrase. It's very intriguing to me. It could be in prayer and worship. Once again, I'm happy about the Lilly Grant, and I'm happy about anything that helps us do more to augment. Churches like this have had a wonderful academic, thoughtful faith. I value that. And it's incomplete. And ever more these days it's incomplete because people aren't necessarily looking for that as a lead. Some are. There's always a few who'll walk in. There's always a few it'll fit what you have. But in adequate numbers, it means more about, can we get them an experience of the Spirit that helps them to grow? Can we get them an experience of meaningful service and quickly? Small groups are part of that. I think, Bertie, we might have had that conversation even, that without small groups, you don't really have anything happening for the long term, because that's close enough for human community and connection to build. And so those are the elements that I would say are a part of the ongoing vitality that gets new people to come in. They hear about something, they want to help. We see it in the Brown Bag Project right now. They want to make the world a better place, and you give them an opportunity to do that meaningfully, and you give them something in the worship that helps their life, and you give them a connection to a community, and then you've got something. Thank you for allowing that extended answer.
Real quick show of hands, how many of you have been involved in the Brown Bag Project?
There you go.
Kind of amazing.
There you go.
Okay, more questions?
Mm-hmm.
Good. There's,
Right down the center aisle.
Where are we with the search for a permanent senior minister?
Right. Great question. Love that question. So generally, and it's happened here, people get anxious and wanted to know after month number 2, why aren't we forming a search team? And what I've seen is plenty of stories of churches who say in retrospect, because I've been to those churches, they say we should have given that interim time and that interim leader more time, and we paid for it later. I've never seen the story the other way. We stayed too long in an interim. That being said, the middle time is the time to start making the turn. And I can tell you that the deacons right now are beginning the process of defining the process. That means we're looking at what would a good process look like, and we've made some initial decisions about that. And the goal is to have a search team together and then vote it in at the June congregational meeting, the team. It appears that our approach, I think this will stick, I'm willing to stick my neck out on it, is that we're giving them the big assignment. And the big assignment for a search team means you do the church profile. So we're going to follow the Minnesota Conference's way of doing things. That's how you found me, through their search and call process, although it won't be the only place we look. But the process means you fill out a profile. So candidates need to know who Plymouth Congregational Church of Minneapolis is. They may not, like me, know a thing about Minnesota or Minneapolis. And so there's a long profile that has to be completed, and we're going to give that task to the search team. So they'll have plenty of time and no hurry. When they're impaneled in June, they will have summer and fall to build their teamwork, get some training about what's a good process, and check in with you about what are we looking for in our next settled lead minister. When they assemble all that information and data, they will put it into a multi-page, it's probably about 40 pages long, profile that all candidates will receive. Once that's done, and it's sort of gone through channels, everyone looks it over and says, that seems about right, we're good with that. It gets posted. The job description is in there, the description of this church, the description of Minneapolis, the Twin Cities, and Minnesota is in there, and it will get posted. My expectation is that posting will happen late this year or early in 27. I'm not sure that a good process would allow it any sooner, or I'm not sure what would happen to delay it. That seems about right to me. And then they will start the process of receiving those profiles. I'll say this once and I'll say it again. You'll be tired of me saying it. Once they go into profile mode, when the profile's posted and they start receiving profiles from candidates, they cannot talk to you about what's happening. They cannot talk to you about what's happening. Let's say it all together. They cannot talk to you about what's happening. All they can say, and they'll be given a few phrases they can figure out their own, is, "We're meeting regularly. We're in the process." It is a black box process, and only one name will come out of it, so that the other candidates can maintain their anonymity. They are serving other churches, and it can disturb one's ministry if the church knows you're looking. And so it's one name comes out, and whether the other candidates ever disclose that they put their profile in here is up to them, but it's not up to anyone else. Smoke out of the chimney. If you find a chimney somewhere here and figure out how to do that, it's possible. But what will happen is once they get done and they will go into that process, you will not hear a thing until there's an announcement. Yes, so they will, you can invite anyone to apply. Is that your question? Yeah. And so I'll encourage them not just to look in the United Church of Christ. They can look anywhere. They can look at any person who's qualified. Paperwork about authorization, all that can all be worked out. They just want to find the right person, and I will tell them that it's not about time, it's about rightness. And I will stay as long as I possibly can until I need to go to my next job. But I don't have an expiration date like a pumpkin in the story. I won't turn back into a pumpkin. I will stay, and when they will tell me quietly, not any names, they'll say, "We're getting close," then I will know it's time for me to start getting serious with interviews as I look for my next interim job. And that's how it'll work. And I may not be here every Sunday until your next person, but we'll make it as close as we can. And once they bring that name, I want you to know that they've basically worked everything out. The package, everything is all worked out with that person. And it's really just the congregation saying, "Yep, we met this person on a weekend and a few days, and seems good to us." And you'll vote on it. Who's next?
Since we're on Search and Call, I've heard several references to a senior lead minister, and I'm wondering if you could speak to if you all have settled on a clergy
model?
model. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say the momentum has built quite a bit for going with a lead minister, a lead pastor, lead minister. And possibly after that person is on staff, then working out, it would be probably my suggestion at this point, as I've seen what's happening, that this church probably hire an associate. It wouldn't be an additional hire. You would change some positions that you have. But that, in terms of precision, will be further down the road. And certainly you'd want the lead minister to have input on the selection of who their colleague would be. And so you'd wait on that. So we'll keep the model we have in this interim time as it is. We anticipate, we'll see, there's always the emergent, things can happen. But I think that is the direction, the model that will be chosen, a lead and an associate most likely. The associate might take a while to settle that out after they show up. And my guess is your new person will be here in 27. It could be early 27, it could be middle. I don't know how long the search will take.
I have a question about a one candidate up or down vote at the end, because I know that some churches, and I think maybe most recently Westminster, the
congregation got to meet several ministers and give feedback to the community,
Yeah.
to the committee, and I'm just wondering why we are doing it differently than that. Why the congregation
Yeah.
doesn't have a chance, because I think sometimes when we've done just a one-person up or down vote, it hasn't always worked out well.
Let me say this. It's been a practice of congregational churches to do it this way for the protection of those other candidates and their anonymity. And I wouldn't guarantee that getting to see several finalists would guarantee you success. I hear you saying it's not worked out well, in your opinion, the other process. There's no model that's perfect, in my frank opinion. You can also get a different kind of situation where if you have several, well, I won't go into the details about that, but you can certainly appeal to the deacons. If you have a suggestion and you really want to pursue it, you can certainly make that appeal. I think right now the momentum is for doing it this particular way, for sure. But thank you for that question. Yes, there are other churches that do it differently, all the way to bishops who send you your clergy person.
It is on. Where are we at in discerning or determining the true membership number of this congregation? Because nobody really seems to know, and that's kind of an important part of our profile.
It is. I would say a lot of things have been delayed by circumstance, particularly our friendly, not so friendly federal agents who've been in town, because some of the key personnel with that have been involved with ministries of aid. But the goal is to have that as part of the profile. That before the profile goes out, we have a number we feel pretty good about. And it's going to be somewhere between 500 and 700 would be my guess. I'd put $20 on that. I'm looking to see if anyone raises their hand to say, I'll take that. 2 to 1. That'd be my bet. I've been in churches about that size, and this feels about right. This feels like that. Somewhere between 5 and 7. Last church I was in was 400 members, and this is bigger. I can feel it. And church in Seattle was about 750, and this is like that, a little bit smaller maybe, but kind of like that. So I think we're in that range. And once again, this is a church where I've never had before, because there's a couple things here, Karen. I've never heard, of all the churches I've served, I've never heard so many people say, I'm a member of Plymouth, but I don't come. And I was like, okay, well, that's an interesting move. They have their reasons for it, but they really still want to keep their membership is the difference. There are other people who just fade away from churches and other churches, and like membership isn't, well, I don't come anymore, so the membership doesn't matter. But it's interesting here that there are people, a lot of people in the most distant sideline who still want the membership. So that number will be affected by that. And savvy candidates will pick up on that probably, and they'll just look at how many people are in worship, including the video, and they'll get a sense of here's the working active group, which is probably closer to 500, 550. Anyway, enough about that.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment.
Yeah.
You mentioned, and somebody will correct me if I'm wrong, I'm sure, but you said that you were surprised at how many people knew about Eli Lilly, or whatever his name is.
Yeah.
Well, I think the reason we all know about it is we had a Lilly minister.
Of course you did. Thank you for that reminder. I did hear stories.
Malcolm Himshoot, for one, and then there was a woman after that, so
Okay.
we know about that.
I'm going to share a not-so-secret thing anymore about Malcolm Himshoot.
Yes, he's from
Mal-
the state.
He's
Is he from Colorado?
well, all I know is when I met Malcolm, he was sitting behind me in church.
Ah,
Malcolm and I were both members of the Washington Park United Church of Christ in Denver. And so that's how I knew Malcolm.
yep.
And so I'm just going along with my own relationship with Malcolm, and someone here says, oh yeah, remember Malcolm? Like, how do you know Malcolm? I know Malcolm. How do you know Malcolm?
He made a movie. too.
Right, and the good news is Malcolm will be coming. We are bringing Malcolm in this summer.
Yay.
He currently lives in Maine with his wife and kids. He's been pastoring, doing ministry in Maine for a while now. And we're going to bring him in for Pride Week and in cooperation with Lyndale UCC. It's a joint project. And so we're just thrilled. I just had an email from him yesterday to confirm, and we'll start getting the details together. So he'll be here for a week to talk about things that are on his heart and his ministry and his new book. And he will be preaching here on the 28th, I think, is that Sunday in June, but whatever that Sunday is at the end of June.
Cool.
Thanks for bringing that up. That's been fun for me. Other questions about where we are in interim ministry? Yeah.
I've heard talk about moving to a single worship service. Could you talk about the status
Yes.
of that and what
Sure.
are some of the issues and
Sure.
who's addressing it?
Sure, happy to.
Thanks.
So I came from a church with blended worship, and so I had lofty thoughts of that here, because I love the building of the energy where we're all together. And that's still a true thing. Like, it's a great thing to get all the bodies in the one time. And so our steps toward that, it's more difficult than I thought as I look deeper at the two worship cultures that we have at 9 and 11. How do I say this? Like, if you know Italian and you know Spanish, pretty close. You can kind of, and Portuguese, like, okay, you can kind of make some adjustments and get there. You don't have that. You don't have languages that are quite even in the same grouping, like a Romance language. You have languages that are in different groupings, and so the more I've looked at it, the more it seems like it's going to take a longer arc to do it as an all-year thing. However, you are making progress, and we'll do that in the summer. We've already had a meeting. I'll pat myself on the back for we had a meeting in February about summer worship. And so that's already underway, that we will have one summer worship at 10 a.m. And it'll be mostly the same for the summer, very slight changes because we have choir throughout June, and then July, August, no choir. But it'll be pretty similar. We'll try a couple of new things. And the music will just kind of vary. One Sunday it'll lean into the trio. One Sunday it'll lean into choir or the music that Philip knows, and it'll just sort of flow back and forth between the two. I'm not sure there's a short-term solution for that. I think that's more an emergent thing where you just keep moving and keep looking for opportunities. That includes at least having one worship whenever we have those special Sundays, like Youth Sunday and Confirmation Sunday, taking advantage of that. Making sure to plan ahead this year when we have maybe this year, early February, the budget congregational meeting, making sure that's a one-service Sunday. So we're trying to at least get savvy for how many opportunities would naturally flow from needing to be together, but still respecting the two different languages and letting them play out over time. That's what I would say. It's my long answer. There's complexity for sure. Other questions that may have come up? I am not a candidate for the settled minister job, just to make sure thank you. Nobody's asked me that in a while, so I appreciate that. And when you say it, I will appreciate it as a compliment. But just going back to this is what I do, and this is part of the process. This is the integrity of the process. I'm not here to get a job. I'm here to do a job. And when the job is complete, it's my time to move on and do it for someone else, hopefully. Is that it?
If there are no more questions, could we have a round of applause for... Okay. And just a quick reminder, next week we have from Bluebirds and Blooms, Connections in Bloom. Bluebirds and Blooms is a certified 501c3 nonprofit organization. They create joy and connection for those living in care communities through the gift of recycled flowers. So if that's a program that will be, please come and attend that. It's a wonderful program serving our seniors and people living in care communities. Thank you.